Good afternoon. Earlier this spring, our community was shaken by what happened at a school track meet in Frisco. The violent loss of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. For weeks now, my team has been presenting evidence to the grand jury, and today I summarized that evidence, and I asked the grand jury to return a first-degree murder indictment against Karlmelo Anthony, which they did.
Hello, how are you? As we know, Karlmelo Anthony has been indicted for first-degree murder in the death of Austin Metcalf. And I don't find this surprising to me. I don't think anybody should be surprised by the fact that he was indicted. Maybe people felt that he wouldn't be indicted for first-degree murder, but that was definitely on the table. And they're charging him as an adult. And if he's convicted of first-degree murder, that means that he has a good chance of spending the rest of his life in prison. Now, the reason why I say that I'm not surprised by him being indicted is because we can't have a society where 17-year-olds get into an argument and one stabs the other and causes the other's death, and we just go about our business and no one gets charged and, everything is normal. No, we have to have a trial about this. That has to go in front of a jury, in front of a court, in front of a judge, because this is unusual and it shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be normalized as something that just happens. It is not supposed to happen. All right. Now, in terms of him being charged, I see that they have enough evidence to charge him. I see that they have the right person, because in the arrest report, which I have here, Karlmelo makes some statements. He says, as per the arresting officer, Karlmelo says, I was protecting myself. He says he put his hands on me, meaning Austin. Then he says, I'm not alleged, I did it. So I guess they got the right guy. And then he says he put his hands on me, I told him not to. So from the arrest report, we know that there's evidence enough to say that he's the one. And from what I've been hearing from his representatives, his family's lawyers or representatives, they're saying that he was justified in using deadly physical force to defend himself. In my years of being a peace officer and going through the training, I was taught that when you use force, it has to be in proportion with the threat. So if someone's coming at you with their fist, you can't pull out a knife and stab them. That's what I learned. You can't pull out a gun and shoot them. If someone's coming at you with their fist and you punch them in the mouth, then that's justifiable because you are using the least amount of force necessary to repel the attack. So if someone grabs you and you pull out a knife, it's going to be hard for you to say that I'm justified in doing that. Okay, you're going to have to go in front of a jury, right? There's a lot of times people get involved in situations and someone dies, someone gets killed, and there's no charges filed, especially in stand your ground states, because it falls under a certain category, a certain group of parameters, and they say, okay, under the law, we're going to presume that you acted reasonably. Karlmelo's case does not fall under that. Even in a stand your ground law, state, he does not meet those parameters. Before I get into the weeds here, there's two things about Karlmelo's case that are problematic for Karlmelo. Okay, because in the law that I've been reading for like a couple of weeks now, you can use deadly physical force in Texas. And there's different circumstances that you can use this force. But one thing is clear. You cannot provoke the person that you're using force against. Get that? You cannot provoke the person that you're using force against. So you can't provoke a person to fight you and then later on say, well, I'm defending myself. I was attacked. They're saying you can't do that. And in the arrest report, now you got to remember, after this incident, during this incident, there were a lot of people there. There were kids there underneath this tent. It was at a track meet. So there's witnesses. And the police were there on the scene, and they're asking people what happened. And there's a few statements that are in the initial arrest report. And one of the statements is that Karlmelo said to Austin, touch me and see what happens. And then Austin touches him, and then Karlmelo says, punch me and see what happens. Right there, he's outside of what the law says is justified when you use force. After that, when you use force, it's like you can't claim self-defense, right? Now it's something else. It's something different. And he falls out of that area. He's in a gray area now, so he's going to have to go to trial about this, because it sounds like he provoked Austin to hit him, right? So they don't want you doing that. They don't want you to be able to provoke somebody or provoke a fight and then get into a fight and then kill somebody and then say, hey, he attacked me. They don't want that. They're saying, nope, we're not covering that. Another thing they're not covering, like I said, there's two things that are problematic with Karlmelo Anthony's defense. The other thing that they don't want you to have an illegal weapon on you and then provoke somebody into an attack to fight and then use that weapon on that person. They're saying, nope, we're not giving you that either. We're not going to justify that. We're not going to presume that it's reasonable use of force. Okay? We're not going to presume that. So you're going to have to come before us and we're going to charge you for things like that. And in this case, Karlmelo had a knife. And it says that it's a violation of Texas law if you're carrying a weapon considered a location restricted knife. A location restricted knife is a knife that has a blade that's over 5.5 inches long. Now, we don't know what size his blade is, right? We don't know because they haven't reported that. Is it over 5.5 inches? If it's over 5.5 inches, that's another thing that is problematic for him because he is illegally carrying a knife. He is in violation of the law already. And if you're already in violation of the law, you can't use the law to protect you in using self-defense because you're violating the law, this particular law, right? So it's in here. So these things are problematic for him if he's carrying a knife. And the fact that he's 17 and you're really not supposed to be carrying a knife at 17 if you're not under the direct supervision of an adult, a parent or a guardian, which he wasn't. And I'm sure it's a violation to bring a knife to a track meet. I would assume, I'm not from Texas. I don't know. I assume that this is not something that's permitted, especially with all this violence that's going on in the schools and, in public events where kids are assembled. I'm sure that it's not permissible to carry a knife. And so if he's in violation of the law by carrying a knife to a track field, then he loses the protection of stand your ground or self-defense. That's the dilemma that he has. That's where the rubber meets the road, excuse me, in terms of Karlmelo's defense. Like I said, there's reasons in the state law in Texas where you can use deadly physical force, and be given the presumption of reasonableness, where they're saying, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Karlmelo's instance is not covered by any of that. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the things that it says in his law. And one other thing, I've been looking at this stuff for a few weeks now, and it's confusing to me, right? A 17-year-old kid cannot understand this, I would not bet my freedom on my understanding of stand your ground, even though I've read it for a couple of weeks. I'm like, this is complicated stuff here, really, when you get into it. And you need a lawyer, and even lawyers don't agree. Even judges don't agree, and even law professors don't agree on this stuff. So don't bet your life on your knowledge of what stand your ground means or what self-defense means. If you don't have to use force, if you can leave, if you can retreat, if you can talk it out, then do that before you decide to use deadly physical force and put yourself in the position that this 17-year-old who's being charged as an adult did. Okay? Self-defense. Except as provided in subsection B. A person is justified in using force against another when and to the degree the actor, that's the person, that's Karlmelo Anthony, to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary to protect the actor against the other's use or attempted use of unlawful force. You see, this is not very simple. Then it says the actor's belief that the force was immediately necessary as described by this subsection is presumed to be reasonable if the actor, so they're giving you the benefit of the doubt if these conditions exist. It says if the actor knew or had a reason to believe that the person against whom the force was used, A, unlawfully and with force entered or was attempting to enter unlawfully and with force the actor's occupied habitation, vehicle, or place of business or employment. Meaning that if someone is using force or attempting to use force to enter your house, to enter your car, to enter your business, your place of employment, your business or employment, then you can use physical force to defend yourself. And we're going to presume that you use reasonable force, that this is reasonable. The average person, can see this. We understand that. B, unlawfully and with force remove or was attempting to remove unlawfully and with force the actor from the actor's habitation, vehicle, or place of business or employment. So they're not trying to get in, force their way in. They're trying to pull you out, right? So if someone does that, the law is saying, yeah, we're going to presume that's reasonable. If you use force because somebody's trying to drag you out of your house or your car or your place of business, then hey, we're going to give you that. And then it says, C, was committing or attempting to commit aggravated kidnapping, murder, assault, aggravated sexual assault, robbery, or aggravated robbery. Okay, so there's nothing here that covers Karlmelo Anthony other than the fact if he felt that Austin was trying to murder him, because murder is here. It says what was committing or attempting to commit aggravated kidnapping. Then the next one is murder. So he has to hang his hat on the fact that he felt that Austin was trying to murder him, and that is the only justification that he has under these laws, as far as I see. And I'm no, legal scholar here. And he's a 17-year-old kid. I don't think he really understood this, because I think if he did, he would have not even brought the knife to the event. Okay? So I want to see the trial, and I want to see how they're going to handle this thing. We have to have a trial. We cannot condone a 17-year-old stabbing another unarmed 17-year-old without a deep investigation, because we can't normalize this. We can't make this normal. We can't just make this something that we endure. And when kids go to a track meet, that hey, they got into it and this is what happened, and hey, we just all go about our business. No. And this thing should not be looked through a racial lens. This is a human thing, and if you just took race out of the equation, it would be no doubt that we would need to have a trial about this, that this is something that we have to not normalize and has to be scrutinized. And if it is found that this is not justified, then the person who does this should be put away. It's a danger to society. So I'm waiting to see the outcome of this. Thank you once again for tuning in and checking me out. And until next time, as always, peace and stay safe.